Hi, everyone. This is Tom McSheehy, and it's 6 o'clock. I think we'll get started. And hi, Doctor. How are you?
How are you?
Doing well, thank you.
Good. All right. Well, I'll go ahead with the introduction if you're ready to get started. So good evening, everyone who's logged on. I'm Dr. Lael, the Director of the Office of Special Education Services for Laurens District 55. Welcome to our final Laurens 55 Parent Academy. Thank you all so much for joining us this evening. We have a very informative and relevant presentation tonight by our special guest, Mr. McSheehy, on the critical importance of birth to 3 years old. Tom McSheehy is a licensed social worker in Illinois. Mr. McSheehy has been a social worker for 25 years and also taught elementary school for 21 years. He has over 5 years experience working with parents, teachers, children, families, and schools. Mr. McSheehy is the founder and director of Teaching Heart Institute, an organization dedicated to connecting the worlds of education and mental health and supporting teachers and parents in developing children's and teenagers' social and emotional intelligence. Along with doing presentations and workshops, Mr. McSheehy consults and does therapy with parents, families, teachers, and individuals. He's the author of the book In Focus, Improving Social and Emotional Intelligence, One Day at a Time. At this time, I will gladly turn it over to Mr. McSheehy. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dr. Lyle. It's always interesting to have someone read a bio about yourself and listen to yourself. And just one correction, it's been 35 years that I've been working with schools and teachers and parents, and it goes very quickly. As you know, time flies in some ways, maybe not during a pandemic. I'm really happy that you came, and for those who will watch it on the recording, this is a topic, my most passionate topic I talk about, because it impacts so much of what happens in your life on the news. And people don't talk a lot about it enough, I think. And but anyways, I'm so excited you came out, and we're gonna discuss this topic. So I'm gonna put you on screen share right now so you can see my screen. So this very important age, birth to 3 years old, the impact of these early years, they do last a lifetime. And the one thing about neuroscience, we've learned so much, and even we knew so much 40 years ago about attachment. And this topic, I'm going to try to go at a pace that's good and not too much. It's hard in an hour, and I don't want to overwhelm you, but I want to share some things you can take away that you can use in your life. I will be coming back to do some more, presentations next year, so maybe we can dig into this topic more, because I think it's a real, as you'll see, a very important topic. Just a little bit about my path and training with attachment. I did over 350 hours from birth to 3, and how does a child attach, and how do you repair an attachment that had trauma to it. And then I've done a ton of training with Alan Shore, Fairmount, who's a UCLA professor. He's one of the experts on birth to 3. So this topic, I have a rich history in it and want to share it with you. Part of my interest in it is I had a tough birth. A lot of babies died from the type of birth I had, and that trauma, and I spoke last week about trauma and attachment can often be linked together in terms of insecure attachment. So it definitely was a hard way to start in the world, and definitely affected my attachment to my mom. I've had what's called an insecure attachment, an anxious attachment, meaning I was always worried about my parents and whether they were going to be there. And a lot of my anxiety stemmed from that feeling of that they could go away, and I'm not sure they're going to be around. And for kids with a secure attachment, they just have an inner sense that everything's okay. I mean, even if things are hard, my sense was always shaken by things. And I'll talk more about that. The foundation of mental health and social emotional learning is quality connection, not perfect connection, not perfect parents, just good enough parents. I hope that you can have curiosity and compassion, because anything we do related to inner work, or noticing how we relate to other people or children, it's going to cause us to reflect on our strengths and our weaknesses, or the things that were tough as when we were growing up. And it's almost you have to stand outside yourself and have a lot of compassion and curiosity towards yourself and why you do things. Instead of judging why you do things, understand there's good reasons why you do things, even if you feel like they're not the best. And just know that. And the more you have curiosity and compassion for yourself, but your kids, you'll learn and grow versus just criticize yourself. So this precious time when we come into this world, these are the four things we're, believe it or not, learning in the first year and a half of life. The most important time is the first year and a half of life for social emotional learning. We learn how to regulate emotion, impulse control, paying attention or focusing, and self-soothing. And the way we learn those is through the quality of connection. When a caregiver communicates, containment, which that dad is doing, holding that baby, is containment, and just the right amount of pressure on the body is actually common to the nervous system. You know, ultimately for parents, this can be a wonderful bonding time. You know, but for some, or at sometimes when babies have distress, because they do feel emotions, and if they're crying or even, you know, screaming, that it can trigger a parent to kind of go back to their attachment histories, and it can be hard on parents. And the child picks up whatever's unspoken. A child picks up. If a dad or a mom are anxious, the baby's going to feel that anxiety. If you're angry, they'll pick it up. It doesn't mean you have to be perfect, but it just means that you want to be conscious that of what you're feeling when with your baby. And if anything, sometimes it might sound corny, but this is what I learned in my 350 hours in Boulder, Colorado, is that talk to your baby and almost say, don't worry, your dad's feeling some anxiety, but you're fine. To create that separation. And it might sound like, how can a baby understand? I think it's more a visceral feeling, but the words give a sense of separation, of this is not yours, baby, this is mine. And that's important. 90% of communication is nonverbal. So your baby's reading your eyes, reading your facial expressions, your tone of voice, your body language, the touch. So much is being spoken without words. And that's really important to know. So we have two sides to our brain, the right hemisphere and the left. So the right side is what's being wired in the first year and a half of life. And what are those? That's social emotional intelligence, imagination, expression, art awareness, intuition, and feelings. Everything to do with social and emotional intelligence is being wired. And it's being wired in relationship to your caregivers. How reciprocal are they socially and emotionally? Are they present? Are they there? And then the left side comes online at a year and a half. That's analytical thinking, or numbers, or language, learning to talk, reasoning, logic, science and math, and words. So just know this is a really rich time. And if you're sitting there, I just want you to not be worried if for some reason your attachment or the time that you spent with your child wasn't perfect. There's always a chance to repair, no matter how old a child or adult is. It just is harder when you get older. It doesn't mean it's not possible. I want to talk about this window of tolerance. You know, the middle range right there. So when you're with a baby, you're trying to help them learn to regulate emotion because they don't have a frontal cortex online. So often when we can't tolerate a sensation or emotion, whether it's sadness or anger, we're going to go one of two ways. We're going to get really hyper, angry and anxious and high energy, or we're going to drop down and shut down and numb and become depressed or passive. And those two extremes happen when we don't learn as a baby how to regulate our emotions. And sometimes parents didn't learn, and it's hard when they're taking care of their baby, they get distressed as a parent with a crying baby. And that's hard. You're learning on the job. You can do this with the right support. Anything's possible with the brain and nervous system. Connection happens all day long. At this time of year, your child might be letting go of their teacher. And I find that teachers are able to give things that we all give different things to children and teenagers. Coaches do, teachers, parents. And so that connection can be a loss for your child, that loss of a different type of attachment. Jeffrey Canada's a pretty neat guy in Harlem. He went to Harvard, went back to Harlem where he grew up in to try to make a difference. He started charter schools, but wasn't having so much luck with academics. And then he, in his 40s, became a parent again and learned about neuroscience and attachment. And he started a baby college where he would invite parents in to learn about their babies and how to be with them so their brain develops in a healthy way. And from that, his scores in his charter schools eventually started really increasing because those first 3 years were spent enriching their child's brain, which affected academics profoundly. If there was one thing we could do on this planet, there's two things. One, obviously taking care of the health of our planet environmentally is critical to have a home. But if our government or governments around the world wanted to do one thing that's very economically feasible, is to help parents to take care of their babies. That's medically and learn emotionally how to do it from birth to 3 and from rich to poor to give them. Mostly, often low income people need the most help because they're under the most stress, and it can be very difficult. But if we made that investment, it would have profound effects on everything in our society, including violence. There's 4 attachment types. And again, there's no good or bad. This isn't about good or bad. It's just about understanding who you are. And then you can always work to try to heal and become secure in life. So a secure attachment is an infant who obtains both comfort and confidence from the presence of his or her caregiver. So a child who's able to take in and receive nourishment. And when they're distressed or the mom leaves temporarily, they can welcome back mom and embrace her. An insecure avoidant attachment is an infant who avoids connection with the caregiver, as when the infant seems not to care about the caregiver's presence, departure, or return. It's almost like they become detached as a way to cope with their parents, because their parents aren't there to meet their needs. And the only way a child can cope, especially when they're baby, is to shut down and start going away. And it's a learned behavior. And you might have that type of interaction in society, and just know you're doing it to take care of yourself. You had to do that as a child. Now, for some, and this is who I was as a child, was insecure, resistant, or ambivalent. What that means is you're anxious. Sometimes your parents are there, and sometimes they aren't. And when they're there, sometimes their neediness or their needs overtake you. My mom was a very anxious woman, and rightly so. She'd been through a lot of trauma, but as a little baby, I felt that anxiety. And then other times when I didn't behave well as a kid, she'd go away. So it made this really insecure feeling of, I was anxious. Where are you? The last one's probably the most difficult. It's called disorganized attachment. It's a type of attachment that is marked by an infant's inconsistent reaction to the caregiver's departure and return. It usually happens with abuse, severe abuse, or neglect. Because our brains are wired to attach. When we come into this world as a baby, it's wired into our brains that we want to attach to a caring caregiver. We need it. And it's not a thought process, it's just an instinctual process. And when our caregiver is someone who neglects us or hurts us, it confuses the brain. We want to attach, but that attachment figure is going to hurt us, so we get stuck. So what percentage of each type is in the world? 50% of kids are secure. Insecure avoidant is 25%. Insecure, anxious, or ambivalent is 20%, and insecure, disorganized is 5%. Those are, again, approximate numbers that they've gone up. The insecurity levels have been going up over the last 20 years, and it makes sense with the stress in society and the stress on parents. I want you to know that your attachment styles can be easily passed along to your child. And just to be aware, again, but by doing the work to change it, whether it's reading or getting support or seeing a therapist, whatever it is, you can change that cycle. We often passed along cycles in our life, some good, some not so good. And this is one you want to try to change. It would be great for us all to be secure. There's 4 parenting styles and attachment types. So let's look at the secure attachment. So a child's emotional and physical needs are met. They feel a sense of safety, comfort, and proximity from parents. Routines and adult responses are predictable. So parents are there, they're consistent, they respond to emotions, they try to have empathy, they try to soothe or identify emotions. They're there. And this is, again, not perfection. There's going to be days when you can't be there, but in general, the large percentage of the time you're there. Insecure avoidant. Now I'm going to have to move my box here so I can read this. Child's emotional needs have not been met. Parent doesn't validate any emotions expressed, so the child doesn't give them value. So it's often the parent isn't there at all emotionally. And so as a child, the child's got to pull back and become avoidant and act like they don't even need any attachment. It's a survival skill. It's a way to take care of yourself. And then a parent is frightening when they're, oops, I'm sorry. Let me go on to the next one. Whoops, I just changed, there I go. The child's need is met with a state of confusion. This is the anxious ambivalent. The parent's anxiety or uncertainty is passed to the child, which attending to their need, thus creating a sense of confusion. Again, my mom's anxiety, and she was a very strong person in some ways, but she also was a very scared person. And again, rightly so, based on her childhood. Disorganized attachment. A parent is frightening when they're supposed to be the person of safety. The child innately wants comforting from their parent, but can see that that's the one who's creating the fear. So it creates this disorganized. So those are the 4 parenting styles. What are the most important qualities for secure attachment or to work towards that? Emotional responsiveness. So when your child has an emotion, whether it's happiness or sadness or fear or anger, hurt, or anger, hurt, love or fear, happiness or sadness, that you're able to be there and try to feel it and acknowledge it. Emotional attunement. This takes practice. Can you feel into what your child's feeling, your baby, or do you cut yourself off when your baby's crying? Does it bring up so much pain that you just sort of become left brain logical and you don't even feel? Because a baby can feel when a parent's feeling with them, when they're attuned. It's almost like tuning forks. When you have 2 different tuning forks and you hit one, they both start vibrating at the same frequency. Emotional congruence. Again, your brain waves. When a parent and a child's connected emotionally, their brain waves are following the same rhythms. They call it congruence. Consistency. Are you a parent who shows up emotionally sometimes, but other times, and I mean a good part of the time, you're not even there, not just once in a while? Trust. Can a child trust you that you're going to be there? That's such an important thing they're learning as a baby, that their needs can be met. They cry and and they feel discomfort, and someone's there to comfort them. From that, the child starts developing this trust in the world that their needs will be met. And it's an inner feeling. Attachment's this inner core feeling that the world's a safe place and I can trust it and my needs will be met. That's what a secure attachment is in a heartbeat. Repair is so important. Again, there's going to be disruptions in every attachment, every you know, you're not going to be perfect every day, and you'll have stress levels and you won't always be there, but you can repair, go back to a child and say, I'm sorry. And with babies, I mean, of course, you want to be there as much as you can because they don't have any ability to self-regulate. And we'll talk more about that later. And let's see, I got to change my box again. This box gets eye contact, being seen is so important. So, so important. Let's see, my little box is not going. There we go. Important questions that you answer through your behavior. A child's wondering, are you with me? They're constantly scanning to see who's present and who's not. Do you see me is a question a child's always wondering, and not, I mean, really see me. Do you understand me? Like what I'm feeling inside? Am I wanted? Do I matter? And these children just sense these through your behavior. So eye contact is so important. You know, this idea of it connecting. I want to go backwards and show you quickly. I'm going to stop my screen share and show you a quick clip. I'm going to jump between some clips that I want to show you, and we'll see how my brain works as well. I've opened several. Oh, let's see. Here we go. Beautiful. So here we go.
Be right in the eye. It could put the two of you in sync. CBS 2's Terry Okita explains.
Researchers at Cambridge University fitted Helen Harrison and her 8-month-old baby Anya with special caps to measure their brain activity. Then they had Helen look directly at Anya while singing. The mother then continued to sing but looked away. The study found that during direct eye contact, adult and baby brainwaves began to synchronize. When their eyes wandered, the brain activity didn't match up as well.
We think that this is to do with their ability to detect gaze as a cue for readiness to communicate and readiness to engage.
Round and round, round and round.
Scientists also had babies watch a video of a researcher looking straight ahead, then away, with similar results. The infants vocalized more, and their brainwaves matched those of the researcher when their eyes locked. The findings provide more insight into how babies can connect, learn, speak, and listen.
That it might be the case that direct eye contact between infants and caregivers stimulates communicative development and language development.
And on that farm he had
36 parents and babies took part in this study. Ultimately, researchers say, gazing at your baby can help get the two of you in sync. Terry Okita, CBS 2 News.
So no doubt.
For just $67, you can make as many.
And stop the share. Let me just close this window so we have one less window open. And then I'm going to share this screen with you because I want to show the still face experiment. It's so important, responsiveness between a child and a parent. And this is a really profound thing, again, about responsiveness we were talking about earlier as one of the key skills with attachment.
Observe that that can't be all. That what the child needs is not only to be fed, but also to be held by an understanding, sensitive, and responsive adult. And that optimal social and mental health outcomes will follow from that. And 60 or more years on now, we have a half-century of evidence showing that he was more or less right.
Our program at the Center for Babies, Toddlers, and Families is really based on the theories of John Bowlby, with the idea that we really need to help parents and children form a secure attachment. So oftentimes, families are referred to us when the parents have had very difficult childhoods themselves and are really struggling in this role of being a parent.
Like I said, I never had a mommy. I was never taught how to take care of anybody or myself, so it was like very hard. Like I wouldn't have patience, like the crying, like I would, scream at her and stuff like that, And
For many parents who really were neglected as children, hearing a baby cry triggers in them their own feelings of that unrelenting crying that they did. So for Pearl, it was very, very difficult for her to be able to meet her child's needs.
Push it, push this button. Yeah, hard, push it.
We've partnered with the Center for Attachment Research at the new school for a series of attachment measures to test that our intervention is effective.
So come on in, Pearl. That's going to be your chair. So just put her down and let her have a go at whatever she wants to do in here. Okay. We measure the attachment relationship with a laboratory scenario that takes 20 minutes. The critical point is where the mother gets a cue to leave the room.
Bye, baby girl. See you later.
Some children look on the outside like they're very independent and seem not to notice, but physiologically are very aroused and stay aroused even in the presence of when that caregiver returns. By contrast, the securely attached child often notices, cries when the caregiver leaves, and when the caregiver comes back, easily turns to the caregiver and looks to the caregiver to be comforted, and then they can get back to some kind of homeostasis.
Okay, you play with them.
We think this response is one of the hallmarks of mental health.
No.
What is so interesting about childhood development is that we know a lot about the long-term, lifelong consequences of early life adversity, ranging from psychological effects like substance abuse and depression, but also biological consequences like increased incidence of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and a whole host of other physical ailments. One of the things we know that can lead down the path towards cardiovascular disease is chronic inflammation. Inflammation is a biological response that helps the body counteract an infection. The body produces chemicals which activate the immune system and allow it to get rid of the infective agent. When the infection is contained, the body calls forth cortisol to try to turn down the inflammation. Now, this is all good, but there are situations, especially connected with traumatic experiences, in which that cortisol response doesn't happen. So these people who had these adverse early life experiences had elevated levels of inflammation, which is at the heart of cardiovascular disease. So cortisol is very important.
That's my boy.
The way that we measure cortisol is through a saliva sample obtained upon arrival at the lab and at the end of the lab visit. And our goal is to, over time, impact patterns of cortisol.
Is that okay?
At our initial measurements of these families when they were beginning the intervention, we see very low levels of attachment security as measured by their behavior. But when we look at families who have participated for 6 months or more, we see attachment security at 70%, the same level seen worldwide.
There you go.
Because higher levels of attachment security correlate with more normal cortisol responses. We're hoping to see their cortisol levels change as a result of the intervention.
You laughing at mommy? Huh? You laughing at mommy? The main thing was it helped me a lot to focus on my child. You know, like before I couldn't tolerate the crying and it would make me crazy and I used to be depressed. But now, I mean, sometimes I can't take it, but you know, I know better now.
What have we learned from studies of early life adversity? What we've learned is to take it seriously, that these are real biological issues. That early attachment is vital to everything else that happens. Something that is an inevitable part of who we are as human beings.
So let me stop that share, stop for a second. So it's such an important, there was so much good information there, but the cortisol levels with stress and sometimes increase too much, and we'll talk a little bit about it. Watching that mom say how much the support meant to her and becoming aware so she could change her pattern of response is big. And to see the amount of change that happened, although they were saying 70%, that was 10 years ago. It's now 50% secure kids, but still the progress that they made in 6 months with her and coaching her is very hopeful. I want to show one more clip. These are all about 1 minute long. This one is, again, we're honing in on what are the qualities that you want to show towards a baby. And this still face is a really powerful thing, that when there's no emotional response to a baby or connection, what happens to that baby?
Babies this young are extremely responsive to the emotions and the reactivity and the social interaction that they get from the world around them. This is something that we started studying 30, 40 years ago, when people didn't think that infants could engage in social interaction. In the still face experiment, what the mother did was she sits down and she's playing with her baby, who's about a year of age.
Are you my good girl? Oh.
And she gives a greeting to the baby gives a greeting back to her.
Yeah.
This baby starts pointing at different places in the world, and the mother's trying to engage her and play with her. They're working to coordinate their emotions and their intentions, what they want to do in the world. And that's really what the baby is used to. And then we ask the mother to not respond to the baby. The baby very quickly picks up on this, and then she uses all of her abilities to try and get the mother back. She smiles at the mother. She points because she's used to the mother looking where she points. The baby puts both hands up in front of her and says, "What's happening here?" She makes that screechy sound at the mother, like, come on, why aren't we doing this? Even in this 2 minutes, when they don't get the normal reaction, they react with negative emotions, they turn away, they feel the stress of it. They actually may lose control of their posture because of the stress that they're experiencing.
Okay. I'm here. And what are you doing? Oh, yes. Oh, what a big girl.
It's a little like the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good is that normal stuff that goes on, that we all do with our kids. The bad is when something bad happens, but the infant can overcome it. After all, when you stop the still face, the mother and the baby start to play again. The ugly is when you don't give the child any chance to get back to the good. There's no reparation, and they're stuck in that really ugly situation. Babies this young.
You know, when I was doing my clinical work, I had a young, 13-year-old whose mom would leave him for days as an infant. And he had no right brain activity, no ability to connect emotionally. He just sat with a still face himself. So this intervention is really important. Let me show you just one short other clip. And this is from toddlers regulating their behavior, just to show you this before we move on. Let me see if I can find it. Maybe not. Here it is. Very good. What I want to highlight about this is what happens to a baby when there's a lot of stress in the household. because babies are going to try to please their parents and watch how this baby shuts down emotionally and stops playing when anger is in the room. Not that there's anything wrong with anger, but if it's not in a healthy, contained, shared way, it can just really affect the baby.
There's something inside. Can you see what's inside the box? Can take the lid off. Is there something in there? There's a green cone. You want to put it back inside of the box? And put the lid back on the box? And close it up? Can I see that? Thank you. Let's see what else we have. Look at this. See? Look at this. There.
Hi, Teresa. I'm going to sit here and read a magazine.
Okay. That's Kelly. Kelly's going to sit and read a magazine. Kelly, look at this.
That's aggravating. That's so annoying.
Oh, I thought it was really interesting.
Well, that's just your opinion. It's aggravating.
Here. Can I see that? Thank you.
I'm going to go now, Teresa.
Kelly's going bye-bye. Kelly went bye-bye.
So, you know, that's a.
You ever wondered what?
I find that's especially, all of them are a bit edgy in watching them because, you know, it's hard to watch that lack of responsiveness or a baby being so distressed. I want to share a little bit about the brain. Here's a model. And again, right and left hemisphere. The right side, as I said, in the first year and a half of life is being wired. It's the emotional side of our brains where we read people's emotions and where we regulate, connect with people. The other thing I want to share is that, you know, the brainstem, our survival center, physical survival, is online at birth. The limbic system, this yellow part, half of it's online. So babies are feeling emotions from the limbic system and sensations from the brainstem. This orange part isn't even online. That's the frontal cortex where we manage our emotions and sensations. So babies need your frontal cortex to help them soothe. So in my day, they didn't know any better, but they thought letting babies just cry and cry and cry was good for them. They wouldn't get spoiled. And we're learning from neuroscience that's not true, that babies actually need your frontal cortex to learn how to soothe themselves and calm their emotions. So until 8 months, this doesn't even come online till 8 months. And then over the next half a year, it's being wired, and then it's not fully wired until 25 or 29, depending on whether you're a girl or boy. So again, there's an up and down part to the development of the brain, and then there's a right, left, right? So it's so important this age, and that's all I'll say. And then too much stress has cortisol. You want just enough cortisol, but too much damages the emotional center of the brain. So stress is really important to teach parents. So let me go back to my PowerPoint if I can find it. Oh, where did my PowerPoint go? I might have to fire it up again. This is always a strange world of showing videos. Let me just go back to getting my PowerPoint. It's right here. Now let me just find it, why it didn't shoot up. There it is. Okay. So we just went through some scenarios of the qualities that are really important to highlight here. Now, Just eye contact. I'm going to skip through the brain because I want to jump to some things. Time goes very quickly here. I want to review, I just did the model, but I want to review the 4 styles. So secure attachment, insecure, anxious, and dependent. It's hard for them to let go. And this is, 2 things to pay attention if this might be you is, again, just managing your anxiety or working towards it. Or even telling the truth that, hey, this is my anxiety, this isn't yours. And being consistent. My mom, again, when I was angry as a little boy, she just would leave and abandon me. And, being with me in my happiness, but my anger, my sadness, a child, that's how they develop security, but that's how they develop a sense of how to deal with it too. Insecure, avoidant, these are the ones who the parents really aren't there. And eventually they just detach, they got to. And then finally, the one where neglect or abuse is involved, they don't know. They almost have this look on their face, insecure, disorganized. What's the words and actions to attach or repair attachment? I'm going to review these important skills and show you how it looks. And again, the questions, are you with me? Do you see me? Do you understand me? Am I wanted? Do I matter? We go back to this picture I've shown you every week almost. And so this mom looks like she's very much tuning in, trying to sense the sadness, trying to label it, trying to ask her how she's doing and be eye contact and physical connection and being present with that emotion. And then there's another part to her. The mom has her own childhood beliefs and experience about sadness. Her present day experiences, maybe she had a hard day and stress. So this ability to pay attention to yourself and what's going on in your child is so important to create that differentiation, that separation. You want to connect, but you want to be 2 human beings, not just merged. You're not merged anymore. And this is a part that my mom had tough time, and some parents, when children are angry, do you label them as a bad kid? Do you say, fine, I'm not going to engage with you? Because that's hard on a young kid, again, who are trying to learn how to deal with their anger. And if you can't, and also for some parents, it's going to be hard to be with this part because when you were a child, your parents said, knock it off, right? And so you're, again, trying to learn on the job. And again, how do you respond to your child when they're really scared? Often parents get really scared and it wigs them out. And again, it's just being aware, and you're not going to be perfect, but this growth of awareness. So we talked last week about emotional coaching. And again, 60% of your time with your child is observations and statements of understanding. And 40% might be self-reflections, like what are you being set up to feel? What are your sensations? What are your emotions? And do your best to be an accurate mirror. Remember, children and teenagers don't have a well-developed or wired frontal cortex. They need to borrow yours. Children and teenagers learn to feel and tolerate feeling their emotions by being with parents who are willing to feel their emotions or tell the truth about their own fears and resistance to doing it. You can sit with a child and be with them and hang in there and say, hey, I can see this is hard because it's hard for me to feel my sadness. What can you say to a child when you're with them just to build attachment or connection? I'll share a story. This week I called my sister for support just to connect. And she immediately went into giving me advice and telling me what I need to do. And there was a feeling of like, that's not what I needed. And I had to tell her what I needed. But we often do that as adults, maybe some people do need coaching or advice. There are times I need that, but sometimes I just need connection to being heard or being seen. And I think kids often are that. To say you seem sad, or I'm curious how you're feeling. I'm wondering if you're feeling blank or if you're scared about something. Your eyes look sad, they look angry. This is tough, or this is hard. I'm noticing that my stomach is tight and I'm feeling angry or scared or sad or hurt. And I'm going to take some deep breaths, pause, and say, I'm wondering what you're feeling. I feel numb. I'm not sure what I'm feeling, but I'm wondering what you're feeling. I feel confused. kids can set you up to feel confused. If you really tune in your child, you might just be confused because they are. Often what you feel inside is what they feel. There's a high probability because emotions and sensations are energy, and you can pick up each other's energy. You could say, I'm not very good at feeling my emotions. Maybe I'm going to keep trying to get better. Maybe you can help me. It's tough to feel my sadness, but I'm going to do my best. I so want to feel what you feel, but right now I'm not feeling anything. That's honest. But I'm here, and I'm here with you, which is what kids matter the most. I sense that this is really hard for you and I want to stay with you. Is that okay? You really are feeling strong emotions or big emotions. I notice that my chest feels pressure on it and I'm not breathing. I just spaced out. It must be tough for me to feel my emotions. I'm in my head. I don't even know if I have a body right now. Presence and feeling is more important than words. Just simple words is enough, and it's more important than advice. Because if you want to, and mirroring words again from Harville Hendrix is, I see, I hear, I notice this, you feel this, you want, validating them, which we all want to feel like we're making sense. I understand your anger, it makes sense. You're making sense to me. Empathizing, as I'm feeling this with you, I imagine you're feeling this, so I can sense my own sadness, and it feels like maybe you're feeling sad. Again, children will set you up to feel what they feel. And the more you can tune into it, there you be. I told the story last week and just of how much when kids come into the play therapy room, they'll set me up to feel their worlds, meaning they'll do things so I feel what they feel. And again, to be curious what you're feeling when you're with your child, because it'll help you connect with them to say, I sense this is really hard for you. Let me skip ahead a little bit. I want to get into a few slides that support. I want to remind you of the 6 emotions, and I'll be sending, these will be linked on the end because you want to post these and get really good. I think the first step, if I was in your shoes, is I would really, for a while, a week or so, pay attention to what my body, my brainstem was saying. Senses. Can you sense your body? Butterflies, an upset stomach, racing heart. To get really good. This might be something you cut yourself off from. Then you might get curious about what you're feeling from moment to moment throughout a day and get really good at identifying your feelings, because now you're going to be more able to connect with your child. The more you practice what you're feeling, you'll be able to practice connecting with them. And again, we talked about this toggling that you can do when you're playing with your child. Getting down on their level is so important. I noticed that a parent was doing that in a video. And remember, you want to sort of check in with yourself. It's sort of like you want to put your oxygen mask on first on the airlines. Checking in with the 3 levels of the brain or the 3 languages, and do some self-care like, wow, I'm noticing, what you're feeling. You can keep it inside or you can speak it out loud, but then notice what he's doing factually. You're racing that car back and forth really fast, and see how it sets you up to feel. Believe it or not, you will start feeling something by the behavior of what they're playing, and maybe not, but with practice you will. And the more you can toggle back and forth, it's like toggling between the right brain. The left brain is factually seeing what he's doing. The right brain is what you're feeling. And it's kind of helping him. It's being a mirror for him, mirroring back to him his own inner emotional experience so he can learn to identify it, feel it, and tolerate it. While you're noticing what you're feeling, like when I do play therapy with kids, if I'm feeling a tight stomach and anxious, I'll start taking some deep breaths and I'll rub my arms or shake my hands to move the energy. And so I'm showing the child how to regulate emotion without telling them you need to take a deep breath. So again, just trying to create that connection through play. Let me show, art's a great way. Of course, there's 3 languages, back to Jeffrey Canada, throughout the day to check in with what's the body saying, what's the emotion saying, what could I do, a deep breath to take care. While you're reading a book, what am I noticing in my body while we're reading this really scary story? How am I feeling right now? And again, back to this, the cell phone's going to come into your life, but how do you build self-awareness and social emotional intelligence and connect? Ideally, you're not using this all the time, because the connection right now is with the phone, right? There's no eye contact. There is some body connection, which is good. That's good. Now the dad put his down, and now you could play this game of just noticing, like while you're watching a game, what are you being set to feel in your body? If it's if it's a war game or something, you know, you'll have sensations, and the more to voice them out loud and do some deep breaths. That's what I do in play therapy. I invite kids to bring their phone in, but I get to tell what I'm feeling and experiencing. And so I teach him or her how to regulate through the emotions of the game. How does it look throughout the day? It might speak out loud to the universe once in a while during stressful times and say, we only have 10 minutes before school starts. And notice my heart's racing. That's your body. And I'm feeling scared, emotions. I'm going to take some deep breaths. And if your child asks why, you can say, hey, I'm practicing. I'm trying to be a better parent and be more connected to myself and you. One thing to know is, you know, often we look for partners that balance us off in life, romantic partners, life partners. And often an anxious partner is going to will attach to avoidant. And sometimes this is the behavior that goes on. If two insecure people get together, one will be wanting more connection, the other is going to be running away. And so ideally, you want to, if you know you're insecurely attached, you want to try to find a securely attached person. And you can actually heal yourself through the relationship with the right support. So you can reparent yourself, which is really the game. When I got into therapy, I remember at 32, I had my therapist grew up in an orphanage, and he was an amazing attachment therapist because he knew the pain of not being connected. And I would look at baby pictures of myself as a child, and I really had a lot of disgust and anger towards myself. I just didn't like that part of myself. And through his work, he taught me to love that part of me as a kid. So you can journal and have a childhood picture of yourself taped to that journal, and just start being aware of yourself and what comes up, especially what's triggered when you're around children. That's a good sign when you're triggered of probably some old stuff coming up. And don't be hard on yourself, just notice. The game and the work is, can you reattach to yourself? We often abandon you could almost see us like those Chinese dolls where we have all these ages stacked up inside us. And they're still there influencing us. Can you attend to that 2-year-old or that 5-year-old or 13-year-old? And really attach to that part of you that feels deeply but didn't get what it needed? Can you explore your emotional hunger or triggers again? Those are going to come up. You know, again, parents have learned a lot these days. My parents 40 years ago didn't have all the information we have now, and they were doing the best they could. In some ways, they did a great job. Other ways, they just didn't know. There's a great book by Harville Hendrix. It's going to be on the link. It's the ability to heal through relationship, romantic or a marriage. And Harville Hendrix coaches you so how you can help your partner heal that wound, that attachment wound. Of course, you can look for a therapist that specializes in attachment, which I highly recommend if you can. And then there's always gifts in the challenges. Anxious and avoidant, insecure people have their gifts in the workplace. And for me, being anxious has helped me somewhat. It's also been hard, but it made me a good athlete because I'm hyper-vigilant. I'm very attentive to people's needs. Because I was so worried about my mom and dad, I'm very aware of people. So it helps me as a therapist and teacher. But you ideally want to orient and try to help kids become secure. I want to skip over that story. I will share the 6 ways to calm the brain and body. It's going to be a link. And the more you can practice those, it's hard to attach to a child or to yourself when your nervous system is overwhelmed, your brain is overwhelmed. The more you can find one of these techniques that help you, the more, when you're in a grounded place, you can attach to your child more and be present more. It's hard. And better to be honest with your child and say, hey, I'm just having a really hard time after you get home from work. I mean, I'm an older child. You can't say this to a baby. or a 2-year-old, but maybe to a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old, and I just need 10 minutes, to take a hot shower and relax, and then I can come back and listen. It's so important to take care of yourself, but also say when you can come back and be present. I talked about these thunder shirts for dogs, the pressure on the body, like being held, slows the nervous system and is calming. And a weighted blanket can be very calming to a child. One of these, which I own, is pretty cool. You crawl into it and it puts pressure on. It's like being held, and again, slows the nervous system. And of course, the first week I showed you Just Sam, which is a really powerful thing. She's from American Idol, but I don't have time tonight. But basically, she grew up in Harlem, and her grandmother took her in. Her parents abandoned her, and she got on and was really scared in performing. And Lionel Richie just made a deep emotional connection with her and helped her get from down in the brainstem or limbic system up to her cortex. Her voice shined, and she ended up winning American Idol, but she was insecurely attached, probably anxiously attached. But with the help of Lionel, she was able to ground herself that day and go on and perform. Parent Resources, Giving the Love You Want, a guide for couples. It's 30 years old, but still important. How you can work with your significant other if you have different styles of attachment. And there are other books on attachment for couples. I'm sending you an article that's really well written from the Washington Post on why attachment's important, how it affects your partnership or marriage, what you can do, a book on there, and then you could take a quiz if you really need to figure out what your style is. It can be helpful. I shared these other ones, but again, if you missed them, Trauma Proofing Your Kids. Again, last week was about trauma we went over last week. And Beyond Consequences, Logic, and Control is another one on attachment trauma. It's a great book. My curriculum is made for schools and parents to work together. But again, it works on attachment. And then anything with Dan Siegel, Dr. Dan Siegel, he has a whole brainchild, brainstorm, Parenting from Inside Out, No Drama Discipline are all attachment resources that use neuroscience for the brain to teach. That's a lot in an hour, and I hope we have a few minutes left. I've noticed I didn't take enough deep breaths because it's important to me to get enough information that is meaningful. So let me take you off screen share to come back. And well, I hope somewhere in that there's some wisdom that can make a difference in how you connect with yourself and maybe start connecting with a significant other or other people in your life or a child in your life. Because it's so important, that relationship, that human connection is what really makes a difference for our mental health, but also for our brain development if we're a child or as an adult. And overall physical health. So I really encourage you to explore this, and you can see in the text line the calming techniques, the 6 emotions, the parent book resources, and the attachment article. And one thing I didn't share, and I guess I'll go back on screen share just to share this slide with you so you can get a visual of me. If in fact I can be of support, my organization is Teaching Heart Institute, and my website is very bare bones, but in a month, a brand new one that will be much more, we'll have classes for parents and teachers on it will be present. But in the meantime, you can reach me at tom@teachingheartinstitute.com, or you can sign up for my newsletter at teachingheartinstitute.com if you want to stay connected. If you want to type in any questions, and I'll stay a minute or two if you have a question that you want to type in, or if you want to raise your hand, I can unmic you or try to unmic you to have you ask your question. Be happy to see you too. So feel free to type or raise your hand if I can see a hand, and see if there's any questions. Any hands? I guess not. Well, you know where you can contact me. I want to thank Dr. Thomas, Dr. Lael, and Lawrence County for school district for having me during April and May. May, this is the end of Mental Health Month, and so I'm really was happy to share these presentations with you, and it's been wonderful. Really, I hope you've gotten something out of it, and if not, or if you did, it was too fast, maybe if you can watch it on video, or those at home are watching now, I hope it helps you in some way in your life, in your child's life. And I'm probably going to see you next year with some presentations. So have a safe summer, stay healthy, and have a restful, fun summer. Take care of yourself. Bye.